Welcome everybody to June's Friday Live. Friday Live is a sponsored meetup group by FM BetterForms and our team. We try to bring motivational stuff for developers, whether it's techniques, user experience, or actual apps and things like that people have built, and feature that type of stuff. Where our goal really is to grow our FileMaker and our FileMaker community. This week we have our special guest is Jesse Roberts from Unbound 360 and a few other companies as well. Jesse's been a returning feature on our meetup, and it's had really good response. So he's got some exciting news that he's going to share with us. I want to get started right away and just talk really quickly about our roadmap. Let's make sure our screen is shared, and if it's not, just let me know. A few things that we have new. Each quarter, our team has independent goals for each member of the team. We call them rocks, and they're usually try to be some type of a task that we accomplish in the course of the 3 months of the quarter. One of the rocks with two of our team is going to be to review our training materials, our onboarding materials, and put together a bit of a course type lesson plan, as well as smooth out any bugs to make it easier for people to onboard into the platform. So we're excited about that. One of the rocks from last quarter was a graphic user interface. Michael Zalznak, one of our team, he's working on that primarily. He's the lead developer on that project. And he just debuted some of that stuff to the rest of our team last week. So over this next quarter, we're going to be releasing that into early alpha, and we'll see what we need to adjust into that. And the other thing we're excited about is AI. And if you haven't really been sort of following the AI community, one of the new things that was released by OpenAI, which is not the only AI company, but they're on the forefront of the media today. They just released this concept of functions, and functions are this really neat way of basically making sure that the AI can access your data. So the fundamental premise is that that AI can't. OpenAI's API doesn't directly access any of your APIs, because that would require lots of processing power and data going through their systems. So instead, what you do is you describe a function. So you could effectively make a function in FileMaker, and you could say something like, a function is really a script in FileMaker. You could say something like, this script called search contacts accepts either a first name, a last name, or an email, and will return an array of contacts. And you tell OpenAI exactly that information. And then as you're communicating with your chatbot or whatever it is in your system, you could say, give me a list of all of the contacts that start with C. And OpenAI understands the conditions or the arguments of that function, and it'll search your data. It'll return a command that says, please search the data. Here are the arguments that should go in at first name, start with initial C. And you return that data to OpenAI. Then it'll process that data with whatever follow-up commands. So if you haven't used that, that's exactly what the plugins are based on. Excuse me. So that's really promising. I think maybe what we can do is, I don't think we'll have time today at the end of today's segment, but maybe for the following Friday Live, we can look at some examples of that, because I think this is going to be a game changer for FileMaker developers in the sense of being able to incorporate conversational stuff with your existing FileMaker. So that's really powerful. We've retooled the coding assistant, which is a little chat window that's one of Hassan's rocks and myself. And we've retooled that just this last week to take advantage of these functions. So that's sort of in development as well. And then finally, the last major thing is Eduardo and an external consultant, Matthew, they're working together and rebuilding our network. And it's nothing wrong with our network, but we're just basically taking our infrastructure and we're eventually converting it into code, what's called infrastructure as code. And it means basically we can sort of click a button and rebuild an entire data center. Right now, that's a semi-manual process. So that's really powerful for us in terms of scalability and reliability. A few other things got moved into production. We're not seeing a ton of people use the OAuth feature, and I think that's either that or they're not. We're not getting the feedback. But if you have any questions regarding OAuth and authenticated or federated sign in, and authorized authentication, please reach out to anybody on the team, and we can help you with that as well. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share, and we're going to jump over to Pearson for his segment called UX Corner.
Great, thanks, Charles. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Today in my UX Corner segment, I'm going to go over the usefulness and importance of what we call responsive web design. Let me just pull this up. Sorry, one moment. Here we go. Can everybody see my screen? Or is showing up properly?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to start off with a quote from Bruce Lee. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. So in this context, we want to treat content like water, where you don't want it overflowing off the screen. You want to keep it all contained and make sure that it can fit and form itself into whatever size device you may be using. So in that sense, this is how a website like Boston Globe can go from a 3-column layout on desktop to a 2-column layout on tablet to a 1-column layout mobile, still showcasing all the same information, but just making it easier for the user to navigate, easier for them to understand what they're looking at, and prioritizing what is important and what you want more prominent on the smaller size screens. So here we have these 3 columns. This column here with this image of a car, you see it moves. It gets smaller. It moves to the left or stays on the left. And this column on the right here, this clearance 50% off. This looks like maybe some ads and some just maybe this is a Twitter feed or something. In the tablet version, they've prioritized these other 2 columns first, saying that these parts aren't as important. So we're going to hide that. And the next one in the 1 column, they've prioritized this column here. I think this is with the main stories, and these might just be some sub stories. Whatever the case is, they've prioritized what content they want to be at the forefront of their website, making sure that it's visible and accessible from any size screen. So what is responsive design? Responsive design is an approach that prioritizes the user experience by creating websites that adapts and responds to different devices and screen sizes. From the perspective of UX, responsive design aims at providing users with seamless and optimal browsing experiences, regardless of the device that they're using. So some basic points here that we want to cover when we're talking about responsive design would be consistency, accessibility, and readability, and content presentation. And so these 3 points are what provides the greater user experience when you're using responsive design. So with consistency, it ensures that your website and your app and your content is consistent across devices, maintaining a cohesive look and feel. This is cohesive for your brand. This is cohesive for the experience of the user, making sure that they know exactly where everything is at all times, how that makes sense for them, whether they're on their computer or on their phone. They should always recognize what your app is and how to use it. Accessibility. This ensures that people with disabilities can access or can easily access and interact with the website on different devices, including those with assistive technologies. And so this doesn't even have to necessarily be as extreme as someone who might be accessing a website via via some special device for a physical disability. This could even just be making sure that when someone of an older generation is on their phone, you don't want it to be so compact and everything shrunk down from the desktop size, and they won't understand how to navigate, maybe scroll horizontally. That kind of intuitive nature of these I guess you might call them interactions. They have to be accessible for anybody. And the readability and content presentation emphasizes the readability by adapting the website's layout and typography to fit different screen sizes. This just means that you present your content in a way that ensures that it's easily scannable and digestible on all size screens. Responsive technology adjusts font sizes, line spacing, and line length to enhance legibility. This enhances the user experience and comprehension of the information presented. So here in this little example, this is the same site, but you can see this is the desktop version in the back and the mobile version in the front. The actual body text, that doesn't change size too much, because when we're looking at a website, typically it's a 16-point font that's legible, or that's the most optimal size for text to read on a screen. But you see this header here, the design and craft. On the desktop, you have a lot of room to make it big and bold. But when you put it on a mobile device, if you keep that same size, it's going to take up most of the screen. It's going to look too crowded. So just in that header, they shrunk it down so that it at least fits and creates a cohesive visual balance on the screen. Next. So these responsive web designs are really based around creating breakpoints. Now, breakpoints, they are what you would use as baselines for how something is going to look on different size screens. So you could say a breakpoint would be at 700 pixels, that's a medium-sized screen, and 1080 pixels wide is a large-size screen. And so making these breakpoints allows you to reshuffle your layout. It improves usability and navigation, and offers optimization for your images. Now, when you're reshuffling your layout, you're ensuring that content is displayed in an optimal way, maintaining readability, hierarchy, and visual balance. So this might include something like, or at least some responsive designs might stack elements vertically or reposition them to fit into a narrower screen. You might also, for example, truncate your navigation tabs in a hamburger menu. So this just means that when you're resizing things, and we can maybe go back to the Boston Globe, for example, I guess these columns are already vertical, but let's say that some of these items were laid out horizontally, spread out across on a big screen. But when you shrink it, as opposed between the options of having it maintain its horizontal structure and shrinking these cards, or maybe having them load off screen so you have to scroll horizontally, instead of that, you can restack them vertically so that they are one on top of each other and they're not off screen. You have a lot more vertical real estate than horizontal real estate. So scrolling vertically is a lot easier than scrolling side to side, and it's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot easier. Stacking within the right context is a better way of reshuffling your layout. Next is the improved usability and navigation. This is ensuring that the users can easily navigate the website and access important sections. So as the designer or developer, you can adapt the size and placement of your interactive elements, such as the buttons on your forms, or make them more touch-friendly for mobile users. So I have this image here. This is kind of a heat map of the accessible points on your phone from your thumb, because that's the main way that people are using their phones. It's not with, putting your phone down on your table and using two fingers to navigate. It's just one hand, one thumb. This is showing that most of the time you're kind of in this green section. So that gives you a lot of opportunity for scrolling vertically. Maybe you don't put the important buttons at the bottom right, if that's one of your primary buttons that helps the user go through your workflow, and make sure that it's centered. Just optimizing these placements for mobile users and what's most accessible for them when they're on a smaller screen. And the last one here is image optimization, optimizing the website's performance by delivering appropriately sized images, reducing load times, and conserving bandwidth. With optimized images, the user experience is improved as the images can display quicker and proportionately in different device sizes without compromising the quality. And that's something
Harrison,
that,
I think we're still on your breakpoint slide.
oh, sorry, yeah, this is this
Oh,
optimization, image
oh, sorry.
optimization. Yeah, no worries. That's kind of the last point on these breakpoints where if you have a small screen, maybe one of those breakpoints changes a high res image into a lower res image just to help it load a little faster. Or when you're on a large size screen, have that breakpoint indicate that on large screens, use the high quality image because you don't want it to be a low quality image that's stretched out and blurred. I think that's one small but really effective way to add legitimacy to your website or to your app. When you go onto a website, maybe that was designed primarily for mobile, you open it up on a desktop and you have these big hero images, but they're a little blurry, they're a little pixelated. In my in my experience, that tells me that whatever website I'm on, they're not conscious or they're not paying attention to that user experience. And it's not a make or break for a website, but like I said, I think it adds some legitimacy to show that you're putting in the effort to showcase high quality images, high quality user interface. You never want to see a blurry or pixelated image on a professional website. And this last slide here are just some tips for using responsive layouts in your designs. Excuse me. So one thing that I try to practice is when I'm designing something, I try my best to have the mobile first approach, which is to begin the design and development process by focusing on the mobile experience first. And so with that, you ensure that your website or app is optimized for smaller screens and essential functionality is prioritized. As you progress, you can enhance the design and add more features for larger screens. And so for this, in this case, I like to do this because if you're building something on a large screen first, you have a lot of space and a lot of room to add features and add buttons and add all kinds of elements. But it's fine on a large screen. But what happens when you shrink it down? And so if you start off big and you add all these features and all these things, when you start redesigning or you start adding those breakpoints for small screens, it makes it a lot more difficult and unnecessarily difficult trying to figure out, okay, so I have these 10 things that I want on the screen, but how do I fit it on the small screen? And that's why I just like to do mobile first. You understand what's the most important. I guess it kind of highlights your hierarchy of what content you want to put forward first, what content can be hidden. So for example, a header navigation, one of those navigation bars at the top where you have the different tabs for different pages. If you have, 7 or 8 different pages on your website on a desktop, maybe that all fits at the top row. But when you get down to a mobile screen, your horizontal real estate is really limited. You don't really want to stack those items necessarily. Otherwise, your whole screen is going to be just the navigation. So instead, you might hide it in the hamburger menu. A hamburger menu is just that icon with the 3 lines, typical icon for showing that there's something or showing that there's a list of items behind it. So you click on that hamburger menu at the top left, and it opens up a side menu of all your navigation. That's a really common desktop to mobile kind of responsive design there. Next is the using responsive frameworks or grid systems. So these frameworks provide pre-built components and responsive grid systems that simplify the development process. And so what that means is using systems like, Tailwind, and I'll show an example of Tailwind using that. Bootstrap has this as well. And these are just built-in methods and components to create these responsive frameworks. So instead of creating it all on your own, there's plenty of libraries and examples that you can find online. Like I said, Tailwind, which I think is what we use primarily, is built into the system, so there's no need to create it yourself. And so I'll show Tailwind after this last thing. The last one is just testing and iterating your design across devices. So testing your responsive design across various devices and screen sizes to ensure a consistent and enjoyable user experience. So using tools like the browser development tools and resizing your screen there. There are some device simulators that you can download. I think plugins in Chrome or any other browser, or even physical devices, opening up your app on your phone just to compare it with your desktop. This is all to test the design's responsiveness. So paying attention to the layout, the typography, the navigation, and interactive elements to ensure that they function as intended on different devices. You want to iterate and make those adjustments based on the testing feedback that you see to optimize that responsive experience. So I want to share a couple things, starting with Tailwind. I'll show you what I mean by these frameworks. And I also want to show 3 examples of really well done responsive websites. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Great. So we can see the new screen here.
Yes.
Great. This is Tailwind CSS. And so these are the responsive design, I guess you might call them. This is their framework that they built. So you have these breakpoint prefixes for small screens, medium screens, large screens, and all that. A small screen is typically a mobile screen, so just a phone. Medium screen is what we would typically use for tablets, because that's kind of the in-between between phones and computers. Large screens, this is just a variance between a regular size desktop screen and like maybe an ultra wide screen. And so what they do here is, and I'm not a developer, so I can't translate this directly, but all I see is here you have a card, and if you shrink it, what happens to the card? Because at some point, if you keep shrinking it this way, you're gonna lose space, and all that text is gonna scrunch down into a single line, where you're gonna have one word per line, and it's just gonna be super tall. So what they do here is they move this image on the left, and when it gets to a certain size, the breakpoint tells it to change where the image is. So instead of putting it on the side, because that will make it too tall, the more you shrink it, now we have it on the top, and it does, it increases the height of the card itself, but we're maintaining the legibility of the text here. So here you can see that's one breakpoint, and then as you get down here, this is a maximum width for this card at this size screen, and then you can shrink it down and down and down, and now it's still maintaining that same legibility that you had on on this layout for a larger screen. So that's one example of utilizing a framework, a pre-built framework from Tailwind. Then I wanted to show you guys some really great examples of how other websites handle responsive design. So here we have this website called Zendesk. I'm not super familiar with what any of these websites do. All I know is that when I was researching, these stood out to me as really well designed websites. So I'm going to shrink down my browser here, and I don't think that you can see it live as I'm moving it, but I'll just slowly show the difference between these different size screens. So this is a smaller computer size screen. Something's shrunk down. I think this image shrunk down, and you can see that this top area, it's maintaining the same size until it gets to the next breakpoint. So we're going to keep shrinking it.
So
now we're getting
stop. Pearson, sorry to cut you there. As soon as you stop dragging it, then that's when the Zoom will update. So we do see the updates, but we don't see it live moving.
Yeah, so I'm trying to just shrink it in small increments. But this is something that you guys can try too on your own, is going to websites and seeing how their website shrinks down. And so these big companies will hopefully have this responsive design implemented into their apps and websites. So as we're shrinking down, now we're kind of getting to a tablet size screen. We're going to keep shrinking and to a mobile screen. Now this is a mobile screen, or maybe this is a smaller tablet screen setup where they've reshuffled their content. So now it's stacked on top of each other, and these buttons are wide, so you can access it from your phone. or at least with your thumb on your phone, shrinking down and down and down. Now this is a pure mobile screen, and everything is just, each section is one on top of the other, and there's no more, there's no more 2-column design. So same thing with a website like this. Mural, this is something that I've used back when I was in school, just like a really simple, kind of collaborative sticky note app. But as you're making it bigger screen, now this image here on the right side, here it's like it's just a smaller image on the right, but when you shrink it down, big image below. So just another example of reshuffling your content to make it more legible depending on the screen. As we get to the largest size screen, I think that there is a maximum width. Now these titles and this header navigation, it's reached its maximum width, so there's no need to expand it anymore. That's another, I guess, rule of thumb is not everything has to reach the full width of the screen. So the text stops at a certain point. You have a lot of white space on the ends, but that's only because you have such a wide screen. It's better than stretching everything out all the way and forcing the user to move their entire head to read your content. And the last one here, just another last example, Lattice. I like their use of this, kind of like their marketing website. And so you have their ticker tape of all their I guess collaborators or people they've worked with. And I think this is an example of it. Maybe I thought it was going to stack onto itself, but that didn't. But this section here, these points, I think these were, you can see that they're wrapping on itself in a way that makes it just easier to look at on whatever screen you're on. So those are just some quick examples of what I think, and I think what a lot of industry people would consider to be great examples of responsive design. And the last thing I'm going to show is something that I'm really excited for, and this has to do with Figma. Figma is the app that I use to make my designs. They've released some pretty major updates that allow for responsive design in the prototyping process. So for example, what I did, I just made a really quick, because this came out, I think, in the last week. Now I have the ability in Figma without having to do any programming. And this is useful for showing developers designs is now I have this capability of creating these breakpoints on my own instead of having to make different versions of different screens on different frames here. Now I have this 3-column setup. If I shrink it down, it turns into 2 columns after a certain point. When these cards get too small, I've indicated the maximum width to be 500 pixels, the minimum width to be 300 pixels. If it hits 300 pixels and I'm still shrinking the screen, then it knows to wrap itself and turn into less columns. So here it's going to turn into a 1-column interface. And I think this is a really powerful feature that they've released. And what I want to prepare for is we're thinking of maybe me hosting some lessons on how to use Figma, because that is how I create all of my frameworks and all of my designs that I pass on to the team. And I think this is a really useful tool to help developers and designers understand and figure out how they want their apps and websites to look. So I think maybe that's something that we can that you guys can look out for in the near future. I'll be teaching and kind of going through how to use Figma. It's a free app. It's a free tool, and really, really powerful. So that's all I wanted to say about responsive web design. And I see we have a few questions in the chat, or a few comments here, and I'm not sure if these are for me or if these are for something else. Can you zoom in? Oh, sorry, Vincenzo, zooming in on a request to zoom in on something I might have missed that about 10 minutes ago. And Fabio says that in Safari, you can test it without shrinking the window. enable the developer tools and choose enter responsive design mode to test the layout in different scenarios. There you go. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to reshape your screen or anything, but yeah, the developer tools, I think in Chrome as well, when you open up or when you inspect a page, there's that option to show it on a mobile screen or resize the screen while still having all of your developer tools open on the left or on the right side. Yeah, I think it's just a really important part of UX that can really take your website to a whole nother level. Slack does not have this function. Is that, are you referring to Slack not having any responsive design, or?
The Slack app does have some responsiveness, but it's not the greatest. You always end up with the individual chat column on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some people do it better. At least what I'm seeing with Slack right now is when I'm shrinking it down, that side menu collapses automatically. That's not bad, you know. I would have to take a closer look to see like what exactly is missing, because you know not everything needs super responsive design. If you know that your app, let's say if it's in a you know, one of those some software that's very business oriented, you know that you're building something that is only going to be accessed on the office computer, let's say. Maybe it doesn't need that mobile design because you know that no one's going to ever access it on their phone. But you know, there's other use cases for, you know, sometimes people want to have multiple windows open. So if you have your app open on one side of your screen and then something else taking up room on the rest of your screen, you're still shrinking the screen and the real estate of the app that you're interacting with. So in that sense, always good to have at least like a medium-sized screen breakpoint to help out in that sense. And
Awesome. Thank you, Pearson. That was great.
Yeah,
What
no
we'll
problem.
do is in the future, we'll if you guys are more interested in responsive design,
Charles, you accidentally muted yourself.
Sorry. If you're interested in the future, we'll have a separate talk on just responsiveness for the developer side, and that'll include things like how to more effectively use Chrome Dev Tools or Safari Dev Tools, and how to actually build responsive UX or responsive interfaces. We're going to jump to. We'll keep our time tight here. We're going to jump to our dev corner, and I'm not sure who's kicking that off. Is that you yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Thanks, Charles. So last Friday Live, we went over the basics of display layouts and more importantly, flexboxes. Today, we're going to be giving you an overview of the ways Vue lets you utilize your data. These important concepts will level up your simple web form into a powerful web app. I'll hand it off to Christina to introduce us to the basics.
I will screen share. The text size okay?
Yeah, I think it's not too bad.
Okay. So Vue is a JavaScript framework for building user interfaces, and this is what BetterForms is built in. Vue builds on top of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and knowledge about these help. I want to dive right into rendering. How does Vue render? Vue can render with just raw HTML. They have template syntax and V directives. So raw HTML would just be a span tag with text, and the template syntax, also known as the mustache syntax and the double curly braces, would be right here where you have a variable called message. And so Vue extends HTML with this double curly brace syntax, and it allows us to output HTML on a JavaScript state. Vue is also in charge of automatically tracking JavaScript state changes, and it updates the DOM when the change happens. So if the message changed somewhere else, for example, a user types in an input, the Vue will be in charge of updating this variable. We also have directives. Vue directives are special attributes that allow us to add dynamic behavior to HTML elements and manipulate the DOM. Vue provides a number of built-in directives, and one example right here on this page is vHTML, which is able to render HTML. So this vHTML directive will take in HTML. For example, right here, they're putting in a span tag with some styling and putting into a variable, which then gets rendered. This is great because if we were to compare it to this double curly brace syntax, this would just print out the span tag as text, while this actually renders it into a span tag with the color. There's also a shorthand for Vue directives, and that would be turning this prefix v dash into a colon. So it would be turned into colon HTML, and it works the same way. I'd like to talk about the difference between vIf and vShow. I quite enjoy talking about this, so here's a little explanation about what vIf is and what vShow is, and some fun facts. So vIf allows you to conditionally render an element based on the truthiness of an expression. vIf elements are destroyed and re-added to the DOM. If the initial state is false, it will not be rendered to the DOM. If the initial state is true, it's rendered to the DOM. Then let's say it turns false with an interaction such as a button click, the element will get destroyed from the DOM. While for vShow, vShow allows you to toggle the visibility based on the truthiness of the expression. So what does this mean? vIfs can reduce the DOM size because when it's false, it's completely out, while a vShow can reduce the rendering cost because if you have something that changes true to false quite quickly, it doesn't destroy and remount all the time. And for use cases, this might be a bit more advanced, but it's neat to know. If you need to programmatically grab an element from the DOM, with a vIf, it may not be on the page at that time. While with the vShow, the element is guaranteed to be on the page and is accessible since it's just hidden by the visibility. Now I'm ready to pass this off for some demos.
You're muted.
I'll take over from here and demonstrate some of the things that Christina was talking about. Let me share my screen over here. So I'll start with the most basic example that Christina was talking about, and that was getting things kind of out of the model with the two curly braces. So say you have something over here and it's like count is, and then you want to grab something from the model here. So this is dynamic data. So what you do is you do your two curly braces, and then right in here, you can just do model. And then as you can see in the model, it just gives you the whole model over here, everything in my data model, and I want the count. So I can just do model dot count, and I have that right there. Now to get more in depth with this, we'll start with vIf. So say we have a button over here. This is a common example that you guys will probably run into. Okay, so we got a button here. And now let's say we want to hide this button based off of a condition. So over here, it's just saying we can do a vIf or a vShow. So let's say I want to hide this if there's no choice selected. So again, I can call the model. And right here, so it shows up over here if there's no choice selected. And to go even add something additional, which you guys will probably also do, is adding icons inside your buttons. So right over here, so say I want to add an icon here. And usually this works off, you can put something in your model, something like is loading. So when you click something, it'll be set to true. And then over here,
Hassan, I think that first class is supposed to be a VF in line 4. So
Oh,
VF.
yeah. Whoops. Yeah, my bad right there. So right here, yeah, model dot is loading. So depending on if the model is loading, you can have a spinner here or not. So that's something that's also customizable, and it's a use case that will come up pretty often. And now another one we'll go through is V4, which is also something that will come up very often if you're going through a lot of data. So over here, this is what my data model looks like over here. I have choices. So if I want to loop through these and say I want to show something, I can go V4 choice and model dot choices. And now over here, I can do, say I want to display the choice name. So now I would use this over here, choice name. So now I have each of their names displayed. And now additionally, another thing that Andrew's can touch more on is V binding. So say depending on the choice, I want text or something to be different. I can do colon class. This is similar to how we do calc in BetterForms, where we can calc on some classes like style classes. So over here, I can do a colon class, and this is a regular class where say I want to give them all text blue 500. In a colon class, say I want to do something special depending on what the thing is, what the choice is. So I can do text gray 900. And I can do if, let's say, the choice.
Typo in
is-
gray. Sorry.
Oh, what happened?
Typo in gray.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oops. So over here, I have it set as a conditional using V binding. If the choice is selected as choice 3, we're going to do text gray 900. So these are a lot of different use cases you can use for VF, and these can even go inside, like say tables or any other place to have more customizability. And now I'll pass it off to Andrew, who will explain more about V binding.
Thanks. I'll keep this really short in interest of saving some time here. I just want to point out that we're not limited to just binding classes and HTML data, but we can also bind things like the source of an image, for example, by adding the vbind in front. And the short form of this would be just the colon in front of the attribute. So we can get rid of the vbind and just have the colon, which achieves the same effect. Notice in my data model, I have things like an image link. I have things like a link to a page, maybe a placeholder, and some quantity. This is all data we can use in our attributes here. For example, we have a source, which is the image. We have a hyperlink, which goes to the link I have in my data. The placeholder was also from the model. And one last thing I want to show is the ability to change icons, which I think is really cool. I have this quantity selector here that you might see in something like a shopping cart, where you can add or subtract from the quantity. But let's say I want to remove from the cart if the quantity was 0. Well, I can change this icon based off some conditional operators and using the binding on the class to either choose a red trash can or a minus icon. And you can see here, you can create pretty powerful conditional web apps from just using these few techniques. Thanks. I think that will wrap up our segment there.
I just have a quick question
Oh, sure.
about all of that. Is that best practice to put all of your code buried deep within div tags like that? I'm just curious from a best practice point of view.
Sure. Shar, did you want to take that one?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And no, it's not. Everything is subjective. Should you put all your code in one script or 5 scripts? Right. It really sort of depends on where you're going with the code, what you're going to do. Those like are real coding architecture type things. Generally speaking, yes, with the stuff that Andrew demonstrated, where you're adding and removing something from a cart, probably not. And the reason for that is when you add stuff and remove things from a cart, you may want to move that into an action script, which is like a regular FileMaker style script, but in BetterForms. And the reason you do that is because maybe when I get to 0, I have to do something else on the server, or maybe I have to check to see my quantities are going over what's available or something like that if I keep incrementing the quantity. So there may be other workflows and processes. So if you are running extra stuff and doing lots of extra code, refactor your code. All right. And I've mentioned this before, never be afraid to refactor your code. It may feel like you're starting from zero again, but you get better and better at refactoring, and you end up with a way better quality of code there too. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so the answer is yes and no.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking from maintenance and you know, figuring out where things are. You know, you come back a year later and you got to fix something. You're not sure, is the code here? Is the code there? You know, if you sort of have more of a standard that you follow, then it's easier to maintain the code.
Yeah, that's really
And
with
find
any
problems.
framework or any platform or any piece of
Yeah.
code in general, right? Is where do you refactor? Where do you structure your code? I'm very API function oriented programming sort of first. And because of that, I kind of have a bit of a bias that you shouldn't throw all your stuff into one script, and you shouldn't have one script that does it all. Just break it down into little parts. There's like near zero performance hit, way easier for troubleshooting and testing as well. All right, we're going to jump to our feature, and I just want to quickly introduce Jesse. So I guess I'm not sure how many years ago it's been, but it's been a number of years ago anyway, that Jesse, we did our onboarding, and he wanted to build this app, and he had a pretty clear vision of all the things that it should do, and there was a lot of stuff in the app. And we have a very, as you know, we have a very high touch support. You can jump on the calls with our team, and we do lots of onboarding and one-on-one, and we really want to see success in your product. So Jesse and I were in a lot of calls together, and I feel like we've kind of built his first app together. And then I didn't hear from him for a little bit. And then he jumped on a quick support call, and he had this whole other stuff built out. And it was like, oh, wow, you've really done a lot of work on this app. And this was for a brand builders, one of his companies. And he was super motivated. And then Jesse, I wouldn't say you dropped off, Jesse, that you dropped off, but we weren't meeting as often, right? Just a few questions here and there. And this was clearly a case of teach a person to fish, and you know, and see what they can build from there. So I'd like to flip over to Jesse here and bring you on, and you can maybe start to tell us a little bit about your story and how you started using BetterForms, and your history of your companies.
Thanks, Charles. It's definitely been a journey. That's to say the least. I guess the easiest way to describe it, like many people who have gotten into working in this platform and in FileMaker, you know, definitely citizen developer, and one of those situations where I had a solution I needed to try and figure out, and you know, you do your research, you kind of look around, you're looking for solutions. And at the time when I first met Charles, I was really trying to find a solution for the Stiletto platform that we built, that gave people web access to just enter data into a form, right? That was easy enough. And, you know, over time, you know, I had kind of other pursuits in terms of my career and everything else. And I guess around the time that we built the Stiletto app with Charles, I had started doing some work in consulting for private schools. And I built out this tool that we use to help schools find more full pay families around them. And it was a FileMaker tool, and you know, we pulled a bunch of APIs together, and that's kind of when I really kind of first cut my teeth doing some API work. So we connected to a bunch of external data resources, and it was a lot of fun. And the client loved it, and I realized we might have an app here. So I took that app and then started thinking about, well, how can we sell this, make it a vertical market? So we started selling that version of the application called Unbound 360 to schools as a single file application. You know, so you had to do you have to install FileMaker, and you have to get your licensing and all that fun stuff. And I had a call with Charles about something completely different, and it was so funny. He's just like, why don't you just put this on BetterForms? And I just had that moment of clarity, like, oh, of course, like why wouldn't I, right? So I spent the next couple of months and doing some iteration and doing some work and thinking about what it should look like and what it should feel like. And we came back and we got pretty close on the first attempt. And then we, as you do in BetterForms, you just continue to iterate and you talk to good people and they help you figure out your solutions and they point you in the direction of finding resources in the community. And over a couple of years, we got the thing built out, and it's now a fully functioning web app. It works really well. It's fast, it's performant, and we've got schools all over the U.S. using it, and it's been kind of a great journey. And Charles is wearing a shirt that says "Build Anything," and I think from my perspective, as the citizen developer, it's been very exciting for me to be able to say that, yeah, I did build anything in BetterForms. And yes, Vincenzo, FileMaker is still the back end. The entire platform is built on FileMaker. And when we came to the point of acquisition over the past year or so, the people that looked at the platform were floored that we were able to pull off what we were able to pull off using FileMaker. And I think that's a testament not only to the strength of the platform, and and people who don't use it often don't really understand how powerful the thing really is, but it's also a testament to the framework of BetterForms and the way that the software literally allows you to build what you want and to make damn near anything happen. So it's been pretty exciting.
So Jesse, you kind of come from you said you were working on the Stiletto originally. How did you get involved in that seems like a very different market, right? The schools.
Yeah. So I've had kind of a bizarre career path. I was a philosophy major in college, theater minor, and I played professional soccer for 3 years. So kind of did a lot of different things in my life. And my wife had a promotional marketing agency and she was drowning. And basically just too much work. Everything's done in Excel and OneNote, and she'd be up all night doing payroll and stuff like that. So I figured I had to do something to try and get her life back, and that's when I built the first app, which is called Stiletto, and that's just a very simple FileMaker file when it started, and now it runs her entire company, and it's a pretty big sprawling app. And we made that a vertical market solution as well. So now there's other agencies like hers around the country that use Stiletto to run their companies. So I kind of shifted my role, and at the time I was working in schools and doing all the coding at night. So I'd come home from my work as an admission director, and 5 o'clock hits, I come home, have dinner, and then I'm in FileMaker until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, getting this thing built and up and running. So I guess I kind of made the shift over from kind of citizen developer to more serious developer probably in 2015, 2016-ish. And I think, when I think about my early attempts at code, you kind of laugh at what you do when you're quote younger, right? So I can go back and look at my old code and kind of have a giggle now. But I think as we grow and we iterate in this work, we're always getting better, and we're always finding new and exciting ways to bring our ideas to life. And so for me, having that opportunity, once I built that first thing in Stiletto, I kind of had the I'll call it the intellectual tailwind to push me to do something different when it came time to build that tool when I was doing the admissions work at admissions consulting. Interestingly, one of the software platforms that I used in the admissions world was called In Resonance, and that is a FileMaker system for schools that was actually built originally by Ernest Coe and sold by Kevin McAllister's group. And they ended up selling that to Community Brands a few years back. So that was a FileMaker system, and I got to unpack and play around with that one as well. So I got to learn a lot about FileMaker from seeing what other people built and how they built it.
How did you go about acquiring clients? So you started to build Unbound 360. Did you already have somebody to sell it to at the time, or first iteration?
Yeah, so that first client, I had somebody who really kind of believed in my vision with what I was doing in the private school space, and really believed in the product from a conceptual standpoint. So, my first client, they jumped in, loved it. And then once we started to use it, that's when I had that aha moment, like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't just a tool I built for this school. This is actually a product. This is actually a thing. And that really shifted my mindset to be like, okay, well, now that I've got this thing, I need to change my perspective from a consulting company to become more of a software company. And I think, we talk about this a lot in our space here in BetterForms, and even in the FileMaker community, that every company is really a data company. And I've gotten more of my school clients to start to think that way as well. And schools are notoriously slow for kind of changing the way that they think, but schools are all data companies. They all have tons of data at their fingertips, and they need to use that data to figure out how to be better at their businesses. And that's really kind of what the point of Unbound 360 ended up being, was about being a better business as a school and paying attention to your market and paying attention to your sales processes. So, I think if you're gonna say, what does this thing do? It's really just about helping schools be better at their business.
Were your first builds, the first clients, those were in FileMaker only, is that right?
That's right. It was FileMaker only, so a single FileMaker file that we would deliver. And so that had its own issues in terms of, you have to set up the accounts, and then you have to set up all the security, and you're adding files to your server, and then you have to, all the things that go into a multi-file solution, which just ends up being an impossible thing to really kind of maintain big picture. And that's kind of where I was. You end up with, once you start to get to 5 clients, it ends up being just a complete pain to keep the code up to date, because every school is different. They all have their different terminologies and their different colors and their different everything, and they all want everything to be customized to them. So once you get to that point, it's a complete pain in the butt.
So, and Unbound 360 now is a it's multi-tenant single application.
That's correct. That's correct.
So you have basically all of the clients access, and then basically like every other piece of software.
That's it. And that has been, it's been a game changer for me professionally, obviously, because now you've got kind of a single base of code that you maintain. You've got a single kind of source of truth when it comes to the data. And at the other side of it, it makes things, and this isn't a shot at FileMaker, but it makes things feel more professional and more industry standard when you're kind of selling into the school space, right? And it's not that the desktop application in the school space is not something that isn't sold in, but more and more schools want the ability to have, at least in my customer space, they want that web access. They want it to be, a SaaS, because that kind of looks and feels more trustworthy, so to speak. So that's been great.
Right. Jesse, are you able to give us a quick kind of demo what 360?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen. I know some of you guys have seen some of this before, but I think it's always fun, because there's always things that we're doing new and different, which has been a lot of fun as well to kind of build new features out. And and I have to say, like, I really appreciate the BetterForms team, because you guys are always available to kind of listen to some of my harebrained ideas and help me turn something from an idea into reality. So here, just a simple dashboard for a demo school. As an admin, I have the ability to manage kind of all of the schools at once. So if I need to change my perspective, so I've got all the schools that we have in here, and I can change and view this in many different ways, obviously, which is an important thing, especially on the BetterForms side. But with just a quick dashboard, and you can see kind of what that school has in terms of the current families that are enrolled, how many prospects we've identified, how many zip codes the school currently has people in, whether they're prospects or current families, and then the schools that send them kids and the schools that they cross swords with on the competitive side. A couple of things that I think are really, really powerful for what we do is that we want to make sure that we are giving schools competitive data. So we have a couple of different APIs that we use, and one of them grabs data from basically every school in the country. So if I want to know what the enrollment at Sacramento Waldorf is, I can click in and grab the entire enrollment for that school, pre-K through 12. And then I also have access to the school's website. Now, there's a ton of other data in the back end, but that we're just not surfacing here. But from a competitive standpoint, this is a real game changer, because getting this information is impossible for most schools. So this right here was this was like the first feature that when I show this to schools now, their jaws drop, because they can't get this kind of data, right? This is really important. So, and we believe in mapping. So visualizations are important. So we do as much as we can to map. We also do work with market share and trying to understand kind of how a school sits in the market, how many kids are available. So if I want to know how many kids are in second grade within 5 miles of my demo school here, Unbound to go out, do the research and say, okay, well, based on your market, there are 99 schools within 5 miles that offer a second grade. And so now if you want to see how many kids are actually enrolled in that market, we can just do a quick analysis and you figure out there's 6,500 kids in this market, and the breakdown between public, private, and Catholic. So you can understand what kind of messages you need to do on the marketing side. So for this fictional school, they've got work to do. There's a lot of public kids available that they can go recruit, but there's also 400 families that are paying tuition. So those are people that you probably can also get a good conversation going with. And because we have all this data, we can just click into Sacred Heart and we have all of their enrollment data, as I said before. So we really do a lot of work to make sure that this information is free and clear for everybody to jump into. We do zip code analysis as well. And for schools, and especially in the US, for people who aren't data specialists, the zip code is the easiest thing for them to understand, because everybody has a zip code, right? They understand the kind of the mailing conventions. So if I want to do some quick research into, say, Sacramento, got a couple of zip codes here, and then we've added them to kind of an analysis over on this side. And there we go. And so we can see that we've got how many people are college educated, how many people have a high school education, the number of kids in preschool, under 9, under 14, and the average income. And we can see we've got 9 current families and 25 prospects in this particular zip code. And actually, I'm on my laptop in a hotel here, so I'm not getting all this stuff on the screen, of course. And then we got some information here. So let's dive in and look at this particular zip code. So if I look at 95835, these are all the families that we know are in this zip code. And these are our current families, and then we have some prospects. Well, I want to know more about my current families to see financially, like who can afford it, and what kind of data do we have on people. So we go out and we have a bunch of different APIs into publicly and some privately available data. And so we can look at, this is Elise Garcia. This is her home. She's 11 miles from campus. That's her house. Her net income, her net assets, what we estimate she's got in the bank, and her estimated net worth. So from a school research side, we can do a lot of work with this to understand, okay, this is a family that should be a full pay, not, on financial aid, or, this might be a family we want to start to ask more from a philanthropic standpoint at our school. But then we also identify prospects. And so this family right here, Robert Holmer, this particular person is somebody that is 13 miles from campus, and the school doesn't have a relationship with this person yet. So we're able to provide the school with this individual's contact information so that they can start a marketing relationship with this family. So they get the name, address, phone number, email, lat long, and all of their research, so they can start a conversation with them. And then just, another just kind of top level thing, as I said, we do a lot of work with mapping. If I want to see, for instance, what my current families are on a map, I can just go ahead and click into that and then grab this particular set of records. And these are all the current families at the school. And then I've got some cards built out for them that gives you more access into those details. But then we can also say, well, I also want to see prospects, and I want certain zip codes. So now I can use this little nested tree and say, okay, I give you these 4 zip codes, and we'll get a much smaller list, but we can see then who the current families and the prospects are in a smaller space. And so we can see all that on the map. We can download the list. And so in this case, we might say, well, I want to try and use my current families to help recruit these 9 prospects. And you can see exactly where these people live, and we can connect and make sure that we can get them hooked up.
So you're really generating kind of referrals almost, or at least to use these current current families?
Yeah,
Is that-
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So and there's a couple of different marketing techniques that we can use here. We believe, on our side that the omni channel approach is really important. So, they have a mailing address. You can send a postcard. You can use the Latin long to create geofencing and do some location-based advertising. You can upload the lists into Facebook and do custom messaging that way. So there's a number of different ways, but obviously the relationship-based piece is really important, because if you've got people in a neighborhood, now you can start to do some marketing work with them.
How long did it take you to build all of this out, Jesse? Looks like there's quite a bit going on in the back end, right? Clearly you're not, it's like, there's some UI stuff that you're rendering on the front, but most of looks like all the heavy lifting is in your APIs and assembling all of this data.
So I will tell you that my first conversation with you was in December of 20, and in April of 21, I had the first web version built and in production.
Wow.
And then, we've had some things that we've built over time and added over time, which have been great. And this is just a shout out to Andrew and some of the guys in the team. But as I've had ideas for other tools, we've been able to go out and grab other view objects and be able to plug them in. Like, we built this entire pivot table reporting system inside of Unbound 360 that allows you to just grab all of your data and then just do straight up pivot reporting inside your platform. So now you don't have to export to Excel and do all that. We can literally create custom pivot tables right here in the platform, which is great, right? When you think about keeping people in the platform, keeping it sticky, that's something we want to do, right? And we want to make sure that we're making it easy for people to use the system and make it easy for people to understand kind of what's going on there. So I can just go ahead and apply, and here I can see by zip code the real estate values and how many people are in each of those value sets by zip code. And I can then dial into a specific set and here are the people, and instead of just getting their zip codes, I can say give me their name and their address, and now I can see exactly who those people are in 95608 whose zip code matches, but then who have the right real estate value, right? So this was a game changer to have some of this stuff available to me and do. And then about, a year and a half ago, we started building in OpenAI, right? So if I want to talk about affordability and diversity, I can just go ahead and launch that, and Unbound 360 will create custom content for schools. And this has been a lot of fun, obviously, to do this work, but then to get more ideas about what else could we do with it, right? So, we built a whole bunch of different things, whether it's, Twitter or Facebook, writing marketing plans or job descriptions or taglines, creating blogs or brainstorming ideas. So, we're using some of that other technology and kind of building it right in. And then kind of the last, there's two other kind of really cool things here. We did a board report builder, because this is a lot of tedium for people in the admission space to build their own reports. So, this is a Google Sankey chart that we built in that shows a relationship of zip codes between current and prospective families. So you can see where your school has more zip code penetration, which helps from the marketing standpoint. Obviously looking at your competition, so you can see kind of where you are with all the schools that you compete with by grade, and you can do some measurement that way. And then we did some financial aid tracking so that schools could see kind of what's happening with the money that they give out and track the qualities of those families, so they can look for some trends that way. And, you can show the details, and using some charting, you can see kind of where these families are specifically in terms of the value of their cash, net assets, real estate, income, that sort of thing. So we've done a lot of work with that. And then we're doing a lot of work also. I've really kind of invested intellectually into the idea of predictive analytics, machine learning, and AI. And we built out some machine learning models to help schools be better about predicting what their enrollment's going to look like. So we built this tool that I call SPAN, or Student Predictive Analytic Number, that allows the school to say, okay, well, based on this particular test, how likely is a student going to be to enroll? And in this case, we can see that Giselle based on all of her other factors here in terms of net worth and real estate. There's some funky stuff with the sizing on my particular laptop here, but she's 95% likely to enroll at the school. And a student like Santiago is only 85%. So we can now start as a school to start to figure out what do we need to do to get them to enroll and push Santiago from being an 85 to a 95. Like what other things, what other tactics can we employ to get them in the door? So that's a quick thumbnail tour of everything that we do. So it's been a lot of fun. And obviously, you know, for me, the best part about kind of this work now is just watching the delight in school people's faces when they see this for the first time, and they kind of have that just holy crap moment when we start to show them data and in a way that they just could never have gotten their hands or head around.
So you're building the app, and I guess the initial scope was, I want to build this app as a business. At what point did you realize that there's maybe a different option, like a different sort of, I wouldn't say exit, but maybe you could tell us about the road to acquisition?
Yeah. So, you know, having worked in the education technology space for a while, I saw lots of companies go from different companies go from the idea of, you know, we're gonna build something, then we're gonna sell it, right? That's kind of has been kind of everyone's approach in the ed tech space. And ed tech is a very financially powerful vertical, right? And there's a lot of money in education technology. So, you know, for me, it was just like, I wanted to build something and have it be something that was useful in the market. And my vision, you know, when I started this, was I wanted to build a platform that was in every tuition charging school in the country, in the US. That was my initial goal. And once we got some traction and people started to see it, you know, other companies that do ed tech started to kind of pay attention and ask me questions like, how are you doing this? And are you interested in partnering with us? And can we connect to your APIs? And, you know, there's a lot of this conversation started to happen. And that's kind of when my perspective started to change. Like, okay, well, this is a business, and I'm doing this as a business, but this could also be an opportunity to exit and to do something bigger and better with the technology. So that was kind of a.
Did you start to develop anything different? Like, or were you thinking, oh, maybe I should create a public API, or, you know, maybe I should add these features? Yeah,
it's funny. And you know, conversations with you and with some other people in the space, I always wanted to make sure that I had some sort of public API available, because in ed tech, if you can plug into somebody else's software, if you can plug in the data and be what I call platform agnostic, then you have a way better chance of adoption, you know, with your software and getting sticky with people. So for me, it was very much about kind of API first, make sure that the software was easily accessible and that we could push and pull data easily as much as possible, right? And that was really kind of once I went into the idea of this being a multi-tenant system, I wanted to make sure that it was API first and that we could really harness the power of, you know, web technologies to make getting data in and out simple, but also to make it very easy to add other data sources should they become available.
Right.
Because I wanted to be really, you know, the idea that we could add OpenAI as a module into what we do and do it in a day. I mean, it took me a day to code that whole thing out and get it set. Like, that is most of the people in the ed tech space who develop in, you know, even a waterfall method, but the traditional agile method, who are using, you know, their own devs or doing offshore stuff. That's probably months maybe to go from idea to production, and we were able to do it in a matter of a day.
Are you doing most of the development yourself?
So I was, you know, I would say the lion's share of the development. Now that we have this acquisition that's happened, I'm doing less hands-on keyboard work. I'm doing more what I'll call evangelization and, you know, kind of spreading the word on the product. But I'm also doing a lot of other what I call innovation work, where I'm thinking about the future of my platform, but also my platform in the ecosystem of the new company that we're joined with, thinking about the future of where education technology is going to go and how, how our concept really lends to the future for schools and private education.
To jump back just a little bit, Jesse, what exactly is an acquisition? I mean, we all sort of know, but what is it? What is it really?
Well,
from your perspective.
So an acquisition, they take a couple of different forms, okay? And the first thing I want people to understand is acquisition is not easy, okay? It sounds like the holy grail and the golden egg that you're trying to chase, but it's not easy. And acquisition, in many cases, and there's a couple of different forms of it, right? And you'll see some firms will have like venture capital behind them, and a VC firm will buy a company. And once VC buys a company, they are being basically purchased so that they can turn way more profit, right? This is about making a different perspective chase on profit. You'll see acquisitions where firms enter into agreements with each other. One firm takes the other one on, and yes, it's still about profit, but it's not. But that's also about ecosystem. It's about making sure it's a good fit, and you have complementary pieces, and you're working together. You also see firms that buy up companies to remove them from the marketplace. They see them as a threat, so they'll buy a piece of software, or buy a company so that they don't compete in the same space anymore. And we see that happen in ed tech. You see one company will buy another that does something similar, and then that particular platform is killed after a year just because they were buying a book of business or whatever. So acquisitions take on a number of different forms. My particular case was a really good one, and I say that because my goal, obviously, when I started doing this was, okay, well, is it a 3-year exit? Is it a 5-year exit? How do I want to do this? But when I first started the conversation, it was, I want to think about what companies could acquire me, and think about what those companies, what their ethos is, what do they believe in, how do they go about their business, how would my ideas and my software fit into their plans. And really, I kind of started thinking about that as a list. I mean, I still went about my business, but I also had kind of some strategy behind, I'd like to get acquired at some point, and I want to make sure that I'm somewhat ready when that happens. And that means I have to be prepared when somebody asks you to the dance, you have to be prepared to say yes and know you've got a suit ready to go, right? That's kind of the that's the terrible analogy I'm going to use.
And how did they? So we'll stick with the analogy. And how did they walk up to you and ask you to dance? Were they winking at you from across the room, or how did that work?
Yeah, so it's funny. So when we were still in kind of the single file system here, and we had people that we were working with, and LinkedIn was a way. It's like, hey, what are you guys doing? We see you're doing some stuff. Show me, let's do a demo. We'll do an NDA, and you can show me what you're doing. And at the time, the original file that I built, the FileMaker file that we were using, which was extremely overwhelming and very data heavy, was good, and it does all the same things that you would see on the web that I just showed, but it wasn't ready yet. And and the firm, ISM saw it, basically a couple of years before, and we're like, this is really good, but it's just the timing's not right, and there's some things we got to figure out on both ends, and we'll talk at some other time, and we shook hands and agreed, and everything was great, and we went our separate ways. And I'd had a couple other firms that were interested and kind of were interested in kind of doing the conversation and looking and seeing kind of who we were and what we were doing, and were really interested. And timing wasn't right, or in one case the company said, your technology is way ahead of ours, and you'd be really angry at us if we bought you, because we'd be slowing you down, which I thought was a really interesting.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought that the tech stack. So let's just to jump back. So what was their due diligence? They're approaching you and say, okay, we've got something that you're on our horizon right now, and we want to look into more depth. What types of hoops did you have to jump through? What types of tech questions did you have, and legal questions and so on? Maybe you can kind of fill that out.
So from that process standpoint, I must have done, I'm not lying here, I must have done 20 demos with different people in the company, different groups of people, right? So sometimes you'd have, the COO and the CIO on the call. Sometimes you have the salesperson, the CIO. Sometimes you'd have CIO and people in customer support, or you'd have other consultants or other people that they were customers with, looking at, and just listening to the story and understanding kind of who we were and what we were doing. So we did a bunch of demos, and then you're under NDA. So you kind of agree that we're going to have conversations and see where our companies maybe align. And then at a certain point, they said, hey, well, we like what you're doing. Are you interested in a potential transaction? And when that conversation happens, it's that kind of, oh crap moment. Like when someone says, are you interested in a transaction? Because now the conversation goes from, okay, you like my software, to now you want to buy it. And then your conversations go in a lot of different directions, because you're talking about the structure of the underlying company. You're talking about your own personal talent and investment in the product, but then you're also talking about your future, right? And this is the thing that you're using as your business. So what does that look like for your future? So there's a lot of questions to answer. I will say that process, in the case with ISM, was actually relatively pleasant. Yes, the legal piece I described to people and friends of mine as essentially, I was delivered a document that I call 7 pages of colonoscopies. Because it was just a lot of stuff you had to pull together, a lot of documentation. And in the due diligence process, you've got to have all of this stuff together. So I do have some takeaways that I'll share with everybody that's considering this. And the first big one is that if you don't have it now, is to build yourself what's called in the industry is a data room. And that data room is kind of where you store all your contracts. It's where you store all your legal documentation. It's where you store your taxes. It's where you store all the information that a company would be interested in seeing when you do due diligence, so that you've got it all there and kind of ready to go. And I had some of it together, but I had a lot more to pull together. And, if I could share anything with anybody in this process, the more you can be organized in thinking about your business and the way that somebody would look at it from the outside, and your business better than anybody, but how would somebody from the outside look at your business, assess your business, and really analyze it from the terms of, is this something that we would be interested in buying?
So basically like a document to archive. So is the idea, so you're organized, be organized with all your documents, contracts.
Yep. And I was really fortunate that ISM had done one of these acquisitions relatively recently, and they had a format that they liked to use, and that really worked for me in terms of what I already had together. And it was easy to just kind of drop things into this data room that we built, and was able to deliver it, and it just made it super easy for them to get their due diligence and to be able to ask questions of the data, because it was just there for them. And we didn't have to do a bunch of extra chasing around to try and find, last minute copies of bank accounts and last minute copies of contracts or anything like that. It was just all in one place and organized and simple.
Did you have, and you had to format that? You said, like, is it like in terms of folders, or you can
Yeah,
just, as long as we can, like, what can we do now to?
Yeah, it was literally just folder structure, right?
Okay.
And I think it ended up being 15 folders is the way we did it. Each one was numbered and named. And you had your own corporate structure, so you get your own corporate documents, like your incorporation letters, your IRS in the U.S. Your kind of the issuance of the EIN number. Those are all corporate documentation. Then obviously your articles of incorporation. So that kind of goes in folder 1. Then folder 2 was banking. So it's all of the copies of your bank accounts, the who's a signer on those bank accounts, all of the most recent deposits and all of that stuff. So there was a lot there, obviously. And then you've got other legal things, whatever your terms and conditions contracts are, you keep that in one folder. Then the actual contracts you have with your clients is in another folder. Any of your technical documentation, is in a folder. Your marketing materials is in a folder. So there, I mean, there's a lot there, but at the end of the day, it makes it easy to kind of hand over when the other company's doing the due diligence to see that you've not only got what you say you have, but that you can prove it out, and that you can also basically hand things off for them to take over the operation of the business.
You mentioned that ISM has recently did an acquisition prior to you. So they have multiple apps, software companies.
Yeah. So ISM as a company it's a fantastic company, first of all, but secondly, they have a number of different business verticals. Okay, so there's a membership model in that schools are members of ISM, and they get professional development and learning and resources and best practices on how to be effective leaders and have better schools. Then there's an insurance vertical, and they provide insurance for schools and school professionals. Then there's a consulting vertical where they go in and they work with schools, and they do personal consulting with schools on building strategic plans or enrollment management or marketing audits or any number of other kind of items that schools need outside help with. And then there's a fourth vertical, which is software. And so they have an existing financial aid application called FAST, a scheduling platform called ScheduLogic. And they had acquired a company called Measuring Success, which did a lot of data analysis and prospecting work similar to some of the work we do at Unbound 360. And that acquisition happened a year and change ago. So they had recently done an acquisition like mine in the meantime, and it was so they'd had some recent experience, and it from my perspective, that experience helped to make my transaction smooth and as easy as possible.
You're muted, Charles.
So I guess I'll fill that in with one other piece of information, which I think is important. When I looked at this initial transaction, and I talked about fit before, and there were a couple of companies that I identified that I thought these could be good people for me to work with in the future. And there were some that I crossed off the list that I knew that their particular culture wasn't what I wanted, or where I thought we would be a good fit, from a culture standpoint. And I think it's important when I was going through this, that I had a list of 2 or 3 companies that I really wanted to hopefully to entertain and get in front of at some point in life to have a conversation with. Unfortunately, ISM was one of them. And so that, for me, that worked out really well. So I think having that list and that perspective and being kind of ready to jump in when the time came was really helpful from our perspective.
How did they feel about your technology stack when they started doing diligence?
So it's funny, as a company, they've got a couple of different technology pieces that they've got. And again, there was always that kind of that surprise, like, wait a minute, this is FileMaker, really? What? But then when you kind of get under the hood and you talk with them, it's really the beauty of FileMaker is to be able to talk about the fact that you've got your business logic kind of separated out into your script engine, and you've got your data models, built out into the into the relationship graph in your tables. And because we weren't really using the layout tools much, it was very simple. And once they saw not just the ease of use in terms of kind of what we built out, but also, it's pretty proof. And we did a lot of work looking at kind of the helper file and looking at the speed of calls, looking at the size of the data getting passed back and forth. And, when they did their diligence on the tech stack side, they were and continue to be relatively pretty impressed with kind of where things are and where things are going. Now, I'm not going to say that we're going to stay on FileMaker forever. But I do know that our ability to be super agile and, the cocktail napkin math that Charles and I did at one point about how many people can actually be on the app at once, how many concurrent hits could we take on the server at any given time and make sure the numbers were right. And it was amazing. Like that math really served us well in terms of being able to talk about scalability, because especially in the ed tech space, scalability is really important. And especially when you have multi-tenant, you've got to be able to have lots of people potentially hitting the app at the same time, which was great.
Yeah, and there's tons of room. When it comes to optimization, there's tons of room for optimization. BetterForms as a platform can scale quite well. And FileMaker, there's ways, even if you didn't want to totally vertical scale, you can horizontally scale into optional servers and split up the data responsibilities, East Coast versus West Coast and things like that, and share some data and things. So I don't think it's a really, really good problem to have if you can outgrow that stack.
Right. I mean, I think to your point there, like I built the system kind of with my capabilities, but also was kind of thinking about future and what future would look like. And you and I have had a number of conversations about like, what does the future state look like for the platform? But knowing that FileMaker is, and the FileMaker ecosystem is pretty agile and expandable. If you need to add servers, you can do it. If you need to add data storage and do East Coast, West Coast, you can do it. So it's not like you're hemmed into one particular solution, and you can relatively easily, make jumps if you have to, which is great.
I think another kudo for FileMaker is everybody here we know FileMaker well. And there's something to be said about knowing your technology, because as soon as something comes up, first of all, you can right away understand the limitations or the abilities, what you can do. And you're not at the mercy of somebody else who has another level of tech. Like you could have built this and say with an alternate database and some other front end, but if it's not your core competency, you're always at the mercy of whatever dev house or whatever you're outsourcing to. There's a couple questions in the chat. Do you have any views that are used in FileMaker, or is it purely a data store at this point in FileMaker?
Yeah, so great question. Right now, there are a couple of data views that I use from an admin side, whether I'm ingesting data from doing onboarding for a new client, or if I need to, look in the back end to check and make sure that data is in the right buckets and that schools have the users are in the right places, that sort of thing. We did implement Delph's HAM, the headless authorization module. So that's part of what we use, which has been really great. And I'm actually finishing work right now on an admin portal. So that will also be a web-based view of the application, so that the ISM team can do more support without having to be FileMaker experts and without having to do licensing and all that other stuff. So we can do administration of the platform using BetterForms, and just having a second view into the business file and also to the helper file, to make sure that we have good access and that we can support as many clients as we need to.
Yeah, I think you're always going to have some interface. Like we don't build any FileMaker interface as such, but we still have a main dashboard in any app we build, and you click on, like, it's just direct table accesses to those raw tables, because you're going to always have to manipulate the data, and you need to be able to do something to do that.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever used PHP, you have PHP-MyAdmin, which you're going into, or any SQL type database, and hacking up some things in there. Another question Giancarlo has is, how many customers or turnover did you lose, or how many customers turnover did you have at the time of acquisition? If that's possible to share.
Yeah, sure. So between some free accounts that we created for a couple of associations, and then paid accounts, I think at the time of acquisition we were right around 65 or 70 schools, I think it was, and 150 or so users in the system, with some fluctuation, obviously. That number is going to scale dramatically. I mean, we signed 3 brand new schools last week, so this is the kind of thing that it's popping up, and one of the things that was attractive for me about ISM is that they've got a built-in membership base of 1,000 schools. So they've got a number of schools that are already using their software and services, And, for them, that was exciting because now they could sell our software to 1,000 of their members. So it was one of those things where we anticipate scaling to a large number of those schools right off the bat. So I'm excited about that from a future standpoint, but knowing that we've got enough clients to not only manage where we are now, but that we can continue to grow and scale as we go.
Just a quick note, if you have questions, by all means, please just chime in. This is a meetup. It's not a question, it's not a just Jesse and I. Jordan, you had a question, I believe.
Okay, so I'll just chime in. I think this is a watershed moment for Delft's engineering and for BetterForms. I mean, and so I'm really excited and want to say congratulations on selling a business. I think all of us here are developing within this BetterForms system. And to me, like what's so fascinating and I want to like learn more about is like what were the questions that were asked of you? Like what was your experience trying to say, yes, we have built software, but it is based on this platform, on FileMaker and BetterForms, and were there, what were the objections, if any, that you had to overcome based on if you had built this on something else? And what I think is so watershed about it and so exciting is that someone in this community built something and was able to sell it.
Well,
so that's really,
yeah. First of all, Jordan, thank you. And I think you're right. I mean, I think this story is I hope the kind of story that gets everybody thinking big about what they can do, right? I mean, Charles is thinking about build anything. Well, yeah, build anything. And if you can find a space in the market and where somebody needs a niche software, like damn right, build it, make it happen. Like we can do that in our space. So for me, the objection that I really encountered first was just like, wait, FileMaker, really? Right, that was it. But once I was able to demonstrate not just the power of what FileMaker was doing, but then able to say, and by the way, yes, this is it's FileMaker and it's wrapped in Vue, and it also uses all of these other technologies that you guys are using in your other apps anyway. Who cares what the back end is? Because if the back end is SQL or the back end is GraphQL or whatever, who cares what the back end is? As long as you've got good data and you've got good business logic and you can serve the client, who cares? And I think that was really great about ISM is that they had that attitude of like, okay, well, you've built something cool. You definitely know your market, you know the space, and part of the acquisition obviously is me, but it's not just about the fact that I can code. It's about for me, it's also about the business intelligence. So if I were to give anybody else any advice, anything that you have any subject matter experience in, and if you're an expert on something, God, that's what you need to build that app, because that is the one that you'll have the most potential value on at the back end.
Did they buy you, or did they buy the platform, or or both?
So here's the fun part. With this transaction, there were 3 transactions. There was transaction 1, which was buying my company. There was transaction 2, which was creating a new company for Unbound 360 ISM, right? And then there was the 3rd transaction, which was bringing me on as an executive in their company, right? So there were 3 negotiations that had to happen. But at the underlying foundation of all of that was really about ISM as a company connecting well with what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go and what I developed, and also seeing the future of what I developed with their existing ecosystem of products and services. So from a fit standpoint, it all connected really, really well. And that was the exciting piece. At the end of the day, and I think there's a question about, are we adding FileMaker developers? What has been fun for me has been to start to teach some of our existing dev team, and there's 14 people on the IT team at ISM, is to teach some of them about how FileMaker works and how to do some other things so that, you know, they can understand what's going on under the hood and how it relates to the other products and services we have. So if there's questions, we can all support it, right? So that's been fun. I get to evangelize a little bit on FileMaker. I get to kind of show the power of what BetterForms can do, and then at the same time, you know, think about where we're taking this concept next, where we're going, big picture stuff. That part's fun.
So you found that the people you're working with, these 14 developers, are now they are interested in working with you. They're not trying, like with the current system, they're like working with what you've developed and they're supporting you. They're not like saying, well, the rest of us are working in something else and now we have to find a way to get you out of this.
Part of, and you know, there's always technology roadmaps, right? For whatever company you're working with. And ISM's CIO, CTO, you know, has a great roadmap, has amazing vision for where she sees the future of the company, as well as all of the products inside of the different verticals. And the timing for them was perfect because Unbound 360 really fit into where they were going from, you know, as a data company, right? Like leveraging the data. So those pieces work together. And, you know, as the roadmap goes, Unbound 360 fits into it perfectly. We're going to be growing our product. We're going to be growing what we do. And now we have the ability to do that with kind of some shared vision. And the developers, although they're not going to learn and be FileMaker developers overnight, but what I'm hopeful of, and what we've done so far, is we've at least evangelized them to think, wow, this is actually a cool platform that can do some cool stuff. That to me has been fun. Like, for instance, I built a tool in FileMaker that allows me to go out and scrape the website of every independent school in the country and look for the tuition rates and who all the heads of school, development directors, and admission directors are, as well as their enrollment data. And it's a FileMaker tool, but that tool is now going to be helpful for us as a company because now we can use it to inform our sales and marketing efforts. So it's we're also able to kind of bring FileMaker concepts into the company in a way that helps the entire business run. So I'm excited by that as well.
Just to chime in there, looking at, Pearson was earlier using Figma, an application, and Figma was recently bought by Adobe. Figma runs on Postgres as a database. Their whole organization was like, the whole app was running on Postgres. Postgres is like another database, but it's not a heavy iron database in the sense of it's not like this huge thing. It's something that you can install locally on your computer and run. And that was running all of Figma up until recently, I believe. And then they've changed some a little bit due to for whatever reason. So it's in many ways, I mean, that's a bigger acquisition, but it's a very similar sort of concept where you had an existing technology stack, but it's not about the technology, it's about what the technology does, I think. And that's really the key thing that somebody's going to purchase. Is that safe to say? Would you say, Jesse?
Yeah, I think so. And also, I also believe that the technology is part of the purchase, but also I also believe that the vision is part of the purchase as well.
Yeah,
yes. It's about the purchase is also about, you know, where does this product fit into the general market and market space, and what kind of things can this product solve, and what can it solve in the future? And I think that also really helps from that standpoint in terms of the conversations.
Right. So what the technology does.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And what it solves. Yeah.
Right. If you have questions, please by all means chime in, or you can post them in the Slack. Stuart had a question. Is ISM adding FileMaker developers to help you going forward?
We're not adding any at this time. And as I said, my hands are much more off the keyboard now. If there are what I'll call features that we kind of need or we're on the roadmap, we kind of discuss that from a how important are they for the market, or from a business process standpoint, like what do we need to have? Like, you know, we just worked on this thing so we can push information from Salesforce when we have the contract signed up, pushes information in and starts a workflow inside of Unbound, right? We're not going to go out and spend 10 grand hiring somebody to do that. I can do that work. So that's not difficult. That's a relatively easy lift. So we don't have to hire anybody to do that. But it's not the case that we're going to say, okay, now we're going to build out a whole CRM on top of it, and we're going to do that in FileMaker too. And like that's not on the menu for us.
Right.
So we need to hire anybody else for that.
Stuart asks, are all your customers in California, or are you in the whole USA?
Yeah, we're all over the country. That little demo school I showed was in Sacramento, but we've got schools in Texas and Maryland and Illinois, Florida, and North Carolina. Like, we're all over the place. The only thing that's interesting about it, because of the data that we use, we're pretty much only going to be a US company, because there's GDPR issues, and right now it makes sense just to kind of stay focused on the US market.
Well, it seems your APIs and things like that, they're very geared to that market. So that makes sense. So you'd have to probably retool quite a bit.
There would have to be a lot of extra work to get that up and running for that. So for sure.
Right. Stuart also asked, how many customers are you servicing now? I'm not sure if you can answer that or not.
Yeah, so I mean, when we came over with, like I said, we had 65 or 70 or something like that, and we've added a bunch in the last month even. So we'll be over 100 here very shortly, in terms of kind of full customers, which is exciting. And I've just been doing a lot of public speaking over this past week. I'm actually in Philly right now, and I spoke at 2 conferences this week in San Diego and in New Orleans to school professionals about data and enrollment management, and using ChatGPT actually to make their offices better. So we're doing that evangelization and getting out and letting people know that not only what we're doing is important for their schools, but it's also when we're trying to be thought leaders and cutting edge with what we're doing on the technology and using the business analytics to really help drive the business of schools.
What's on the roadmap going forward now? What opportunities were you going to be kind of focusing on?
Yeah, so
going to be a post.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm really interested in is obviously doing some work with ChatGPT and looking at ways to get it to connect that. But what I think is really interesting is we can use that technology to kind of get in the middle of schools and their data and help them be better about understanding what their data is telling them. So the idea of kind of being able to provide natural language assessment and analysis of their information is really interesting to me. But the other thing that I'm really kind of focused on as well is making sure that what we're doing is part of a bigger conversation around great data and around analytics. We've invested in predictive analytics, we've invested in machine learning, and I think that's really the future. And I think for us, from a product standpoint, Unbound 360 is going to continue to lead, because there's nothing else like it on the market. And that's the other fun thing is I didn't just find a niche, I created one, and that is we're still at the front of the market, and while we're there, we need to make sure that we are continuing to grow and listen to what people in our market space, what they're actually looking for. And schools are always asking for different integrations. We're always open to those conversations because it's relatively easy to do. And that's kind of the heavy lifting on the roadmap for me right now. And if I were to say product roadmap, there's not a lot out there that I want to add right now, because we're kind of in that mature space where we want to kind of let the product sit and let people use it and enjoy it. And then as we add more users, they're going to drive more feature requests, right? So that's kind of where I'm leaning into right now. I would say this: if there's one more thing I would say is on the roadmap, it's being a much more self-service model, and being able to let people not spin up their own instance, but to be able to do all of their own upload for data, to be able to manage all of their kind of the opening steps of the process, which we've typically done ourselves because we wanted to be high touch and high value with those customers when they came on board.
And those things are fairly expensive to code in at first. Like
Mhm.
the whole, even the whole self-serve to sign up for a subscription. There's a lot of complicated software that goes into that process of account management, billing management that's fully automated. But when you, it's a good problem to have that you can't manage it yourself and that you have to code it in, because that means you have some business. So
yeah, well, that's one of the conversations I have frequently with the CIO is you can't scale yourself, right? You only have so many hours, you only have so many hands, you can't scale yourself. So how can we find ways to make my processes, my approach as scalable as possible to continue to drive value into the business? And I think if there's any other advice I would give anybody is just figure out ways that you can create your own personal scale, which is to offload as many tasks as you can so you can focus on being the visionary of your company and your software.
just one quick question, slightly aside. I know this probably applies to everybody in this audience, is we get asked, or at least I often get asked, hey, I got this idea for an app, can you build it? And all it is, it just takes people's pictures and they can post them online. And it's like, you mean like every other social media app? And what is your thought process or feedback when you hear all of these kinds of crazy ideas? How do you handle those if you get those?
I get asked a lot, hey, you build apps, could you build me a whatever, right?
Yeah. It's just a little app.
Yeah, it's just a little thing. I'm like, okay, right. So what I always say is, I'm happy to talk to you about this when you have a business plan around it. And after you've already done the research to see that there's nothing else already like it in the market. We could spend a ton of time spinning our wheels for a market that would serve 10 people, and there's already software that serves those 10 people out there very well. So you're killing yourself to take market share that doesn't exist. So that's always where I start. And honestly, I mean, everybody has an idea, and it's always fun to kind of, if you're like me, it's like, hey, let's spin up a new file and let's play around and see what we can do. And that's nice and all, but at the end of the day, that's not going to move the needle. It's not going to put any money in your bank account, and you're going to lose a lot of time, effort, and in many cases you'll lose friendships over it, because they have an app idea and they think that you're going to go into business and make $1 billion with them, and it's not the case. And I hate to be so negative about it, but it's rare that I've seen an idea that's like, hey, actually that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And then they get into research, I'm like, it's already been out there.
I don't think it's negative. I think it's being real about ideas. I think you have to be very objective and pragmatic about these kinds of things, and not just think that every idea that somebody comes up with is going to be amazing.
Yeah. But I mean, I like listening to ideas. I'm an idea guy. I'm always interested in different ways to solve problems, but I also know that there's times I'm like, hey, that's already been done. So.
Does anybody have any other questions for Jesse? By all means, please chime in.
And I'll also say this in our little community, in our little world here, if there's other things that are on your mind about this, or if you have questions, or you want to bounce ideas, or you just want to get personal and talk about it, you can always find me on Slack. You can always ping me, and I'm always there and available to chat and have conversations. And my email is just Jesse, Jesse at unbound360.com. So please feel free to reach out. I love talking about this stuff. And if I can guide anybody or help, and I don't call it advice, I provide experience shares. I'm definitely open to conversation and helping you kind of figure out where you want to go with things, because it's exciting, it's scary, and it can be life-changing. And I'm not saying life-changing in terms of finances, in terms of you go from being a developer on your own to being, in some cases, an employee. So then what, right? So that's a life change. So there's a lot to think about, and I'm definitely open to those conversations and helping you talk through it. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, it was awesome, Jesse. Thank you very much. And I think if you could hear us clap in person, you'd have a nice roaring applause. That was great. It's always fun to see different visionaries and we have a few sort of key people in our community that really contribute a lot to Friday Live. Yourself, Neil Manchester, and Dave Pong has been on a few times, and a few other people as well. So we thank you guys for your sharing these experiences, as you mentioned there. We're going to jump to our draw, which is let me see if I can find it here. There we go. And basically the way this works is we click it, and if you're here, your name comes up, you win, and if not, you don't win. So survey says. Mark Abbott. Is Mark Abbott in the audience? Mark Abbott actually has a software as a service that runs on BetterForms as well. We have about 15% of our clients or so, and probably about closer to 20% of our traffic are all software as a service services. So unfortunately, Mark is not here. I'll try again. Oh. Digital systems. Is that Alessandro? Was that you? Who's that?
That's me.
And sorry, who am I
Hi,
speaking?
Charles. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, who's me? Sorry, I don't have you on my screen. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, what's your name?
Alex Mitchell.
Oh, Alex. Okay, sorry, I didn't recognize who that was, Alex, and I didn't recognize your voice. All right, awesome. One of our team will contact you, Alex. You're on our Slack, I believe. So one of our team will contact you for some information, to send some stuff out to you.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, congratulations.
All right.
I just want to jump one last thing before we finish up here, but I am going to end our recording for this part here. So thank you, everybody. I hope to see you next month on Friday Live, and we'll see you later.